Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Jason White, and this is Jason's Weird Reads. Today I'm going to be giving some ghost story book recommendations. So this can either be like haunted houses or just ghosts. These are some of my favorites. I went through a period where I loved haunted house stories and ghost stories, and then that just went away. It seemed like all the books were doing the same thing in regards to haunted houses. And so for a few years, I was really turned off by the haunted house story. But recently I've been getting back into it, and that's what's prompted this. Going into from Halloween to Christmas season, to me, this is where I start to crave reading ghost stories or haunted house stories, and honestly I don't know why that is. It's only been the last couple of years where I felt this way, but I can tell you this. I think it's Victorian Britain, the Victorian era I should say, started doing this, I think, and I think they still do it, but they like to tell ghost stories around this time of year, and I think it was a big thing, at least a big thing to do on Christmas Eve. I've kind of adopted it myself, and so here's some, I think, ghost stories or haunted house stories that I think would be really cool to read at this time of year. And they are in no special order. This isn't a top 10 list or anything. It's just some recommendations, but I do have 10 books here, and I'm going to tell you what the book is, and then I'm going to tell you why I like it. So book number 1 here is The House on Abigail Lane by Keelan Patrick Burke. I read this last year, and one reason why I liked it so much is because it's a very strange story, and it holds the premise that I like the most. It's about a piece of land where people built a house, and ever since they started even building the house, people go missing in this house, and there's something very strange going on in there. I love the idea of somebody going in a room and not coming back out. People going missing. That is, but for under supernatural circumstances, and the more mystery behind all that kind of stuff, the better. I'm not going to tell you if the mystery in this book is answered or not, but I'm going to tell you this: you do get deeper into the house and to what's going on, and it's very much a cosmic horror story, and I loved it. It's very good. Book number 2 here, recommendation number 2 is The Woman in Black by Suzanne Hill. I've read this book twice now, and I'm considering rereading it again this year, but I might not. You'll just have to see. Anyways, this book, I kind of call it like the ghost Dracula story in a sense, because it reminds me of Jonathan Harker's journey into Dracula's castle. It's got a similar vibe, in that the main character is a lawyer, and he's going to take after this woman who passed away recently, her affairs. He's going to go organize her affairs of the estate and whatnot. And so he goes there, and he has some pretty strange experiences, and then this is why it reminds me of Dracula, he goes back into town, and everyone kind of hates him because he's stirring things up in the house. And they're all like, you should just go home, not just because they hate him for stirring things up, but they're also concerned for his safety. It's very similar to Dracula in that sense, but of course there's no vampire. It's the house is haunted, and it's haunted pretty violently. Well, maybe not violently, but it's pretty haunted, and it's just it's a good cozy sort of haunted house story, and it's really great Christmas reading, I think. Book number 3 here I have is I think kind of similar in a sense to The Woman in Black. I had a lot of Women in Black vibes reading this book, and I read it last year as well, and it's Inheriting Her Ghosts by S.H. Cooper. This book, like I said, it has a similarity to The Woman in Black, in that it follows a similar outline, I would say. I'm not saying either author outlined their books, but it has that similar sort of, person goes to a haunted house. This one, though, is the one where the violence was coming in. It's much more violent than The Woman in Black. These ghosts can hurt you physically, and they want to hurt you physically. The protagonist has these 2 giant dogs, which I fell in love with. They're on the cover there. And this is just a lot of fun. Despite my comparisons to The Woman in Black, it's very much its own book. The story is itself is different too, in that this is about a woman whose aunt, I believe, passed away, and she's well off on her own, and her parents are gone as well, and she's living in her own big house, but she inherits this new house, and she sort of wants to, take charge of that house because it'll be more of hers in a sense, rather than something her parents left for her. So she goes and decides to move in there, and it was a bad idea. Don't move in that house because it's not friendly, not by any means. All right, next up is another really great one to read at Christmas because it takes place during Christmas and it has Christmas in the title. I read this one last year as well, and I believe it made like number 2 or number 3 on my top 10 list because I absolutely adored it right away. And it is Christmas at Wheeldale Inn by Gemma Amor. And this book is just fantastic. I love this book, and I wanted to reread it again this year, but I'm not too sure if I'm going to have time because the list of books I want to read this Christmas, which are for the most part all haunted house type stories, but I might fit this one in regardless. The story is about a man and a woman is going to, I believe, her place. The man and they're a married couple, and they're traveling at night in a snowstorm. And the husband is a real douche. I mean, he's not a nice guy. He's also lost pretty much their entire their wealth. They were wealthy. He's lost all their money. They're going to lose their house. The creditors are after the husband, and this is a time where they could jail you for your credit issues. So because she comes from money, they're going to her place, her parents' place, of course, to basically ask for a loan. But they don't get there because their wagon experiences a crash, basically, and the wife is left alone, and she makes it to the Wheeldale Inn, which is let's just say it's haunted. It's very haunted as well. And I'm going to leave it at that because this book has a lot of weird vibes, a lot of very strange things. I highly recommend reading it at Christmas, around Christmas time, because it's kind of Christmas themed in a sense, but it's very good, and it's one of my favorite books of all time. I love it, and like I said, you got to be prepared for some weirdness because this really goes into the weird fiction, and that's one reason I wasn't expecting that, and that's one reason why I loved it so much. It gets the wheels turning, and you start wondering what the hell's going on. And Gemma Amor is a fantastic author. All right, next up is The Good House by Tananarive Due. I love this book. I read it like a few years ago, so I don't remember everything, but I remember when I finished it, I was like, this is really good, and it made my top 10, I believe, of that year. And the basic premise is a woman's son commits suicide in the house, and that's a tragic thing that happens, but she slowly learns that maybe he didn't commit suicide, that maybe there's something supernatural going on involving a demon, I believe. Now, this book... it was my first and so far only Tananarive Due, and I'm going to fix that this year, and you'll see in my my winter TBR video, I plan on reading more Tananarive Due. I absolutely loved this book, and I want to make it a goal, honestly, to, if I enjoy an author, to continue reading them, because for some reason I just don't. I never understood that about me. I'll read like 3 or 4 books, call this from an author, and call them like this is my favorite author, and then I stop reading them. I don't know why I do that. It's crazy. So The Good House, definitely read that. Next up, I'm cheating a little bit because a friend of mine wrote this, but it's very good anyway. And if you don't believe me, you can check out Merce from Harpies in the Trees. She really liked it too. A few years back, so you might have to search. But it's Plank Children by Michael Schutz. Now this book takes place, it's a haunted orphanage. What happens is Miles is the main character, and he I think it's nephew goes missing, and they think they think he's dead. He's dead. He's died in a car crash. But he sees his friend popping up in Facebook pictures, and so he goes back home to his sister to see what the hell's up. Why are we seeing pictures of your son when he's supposed to be dead? And he's then led to this orphanage, which I guarantee it is haunted, and it's got some evil entities, some evil religious figures haunting this place. And if you like haunted orphanage type stories, or asylums in a sense, this isn't an asylum story, but for some reason it always makes me think of haunted asylum stories. This is definitely something that you've got to check out. It's a very good book, and I absolutely loved reading it. Next up, I have The Haunted by Bentley Little. This book is a great example of why, whenever you're watching a haunted house movie with a bunch of friends, this comment is inevitable to come up. Somebody's going to say, why don't they just move again? And it's not that easy. Once you get a mortgage and all your money is tied into this place that you just moved into, you can't just pack up and go. And this book kind of goes into that, because this family moves into this house and there's something awful about this house. There's something coming from the basement, and they're stuck. They are literally stuck. They can't move. It was a huge mistake buying this house. And this novel could be a good symbolism, honestly, for buying something that you had no idea about. And then once you move in, you see what all the problems are. Think of like a money pit. Instead of a money pit, though, you have this demonic force that wants to ruin everybody's life and then kill them. This book is packed full of atmosphere and dread, and it drips atmosphere and dread. It's a horrible story in the best possible way, and you just feel for these people because they get put through the ringer, let me tell you. Okay, next up is Hell House by Richard Matheson. Now this book kind of gets confused with, I think, at least in my mind, with the next book, because it's a very similar idea where you have a guy doing experiments in a haunted house with questionable characters. And I think some of the Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson adaptations are more about Hell House, at least if I'm correct in my thinking. I'm just going to read the synopsis here. Can any soul survive? Regarded as the Mount Everest of haunted houses, Belasco House has witnessed scenes of almost unimaginable horror and depravity. 2 previous expeditions to investigate its secrets met with disaster, the participants destroyed by murder, suicide, or insanity. Now a new investigation has mounted. 4 strangers, each with his or her own reason for daring the unknown torments and temptations of the mansion. And like I said, this reminds me a lot more of the adaptations of my next recommendation here, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. And I love this book. It's one of my all-time favorite books. This book has a similar premise, except this one I think is more about psychology, if I remember correctly. The psychologist, he wants to study these participants in this house that's supposed to be haunted, but the question remains: is the house haunted or is it not haunted? The main protagonist is a woman who's had a pretty difficult life taking care of her ill mother, I believe it is, and she holds a lot of resentment towards her family members who got to live their life basically while she was trapped at home taking care of her ill mother. And there's a lot of mental scarring there, and so you kind of get the idea that maybe it's not just the house, but the house isn't haunted by a ghost. It's haunted by something else completely, and it takes people who are vulnerable, like our main character, and it sort of twists reality on them. And that's like the brilliance of this book. I mean, this was written, I believe, in the 1960s, and it just blows me away. And there is a really good adaptation that is very close to the book, and it was adapted, like, it's black and white. It's a very old movie, and it's called The Haunting. just The Haunting instead of The Haunting of Hill House. It's just called The Haunting, and it's actually very spooky. I love watching that movie, and I love this book. It leaves you wondering some things. I wouldn't say it's necessarily ambiguous, but some people might say that. But it does leave you wondering exactly what happens, and I absolutely I adore this book. Last up, I have The Shining by Stephen King. This is another classic, or at least it's going to be a classic. It's a modern classic, and it has a similar premise in a sense. Maybe not similar, but it has, the family moving into a new house, except it's not a house. It's a giant hotel that closes over the winter because the snow is just too much to take care of. It's like 10 feet tall, basically. And so they hire families, or at least one person or two people, to take care of the place during the winter, make sure nothing blows up like the boiler room, and make sure all the pipes don't freeze too much and there's no flooding or leaks or whatnot. They're just there to take care of the place until springtime. But the problem is they get snowed in every year. Like, there's no leaving. Once you're there and winter comes, you're there. You better have your food ready and your sanity in check, because if you're a little bit loose in the upstairs department, this place is similar to The Haunting of Hill House in the sense that it's not necessarily haunted by ghosts, but there's something severely wrong with the place. And Jack Torrance is a recovering alcoholic, and who has a lot of ghosts himself, and the hotel wants to play with him, wants to play with his mind and bend his reality. It's a very haunting book. And I think, it's a book about addiction, honestly. It's a book about the ghosts of your past, regret. And, it's going to be a classic for a reason. I want to reread it. And maybe not this year, but next year. And I also I haven't read the sequel yet, Dr. Sleep, but I want to read that as well, and I'm going to pair them up whenever I do decide to reread The Shining. Alright, so that's it. That's my recommendations for ghost stories and haunted houses. Please tell me what you really enjoyed deep down there in the darkness. If you think there's a haunted house or ghost story book that you think I would absolutely love but wasn't listed here, then please recommend them to me deep down there in the darkness. And thank you for watching. Keep being safe and keep being creative. I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.